Hello. People are starting to trickle in from the waiting room. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, welcome. If anybody would like to post in the chat where they're coming from today and what their business is, that is completely welcome. Thank you. Hey, everyone. If some friendly person could just pop in the webinar chat and affirm that you can both see and hear us, that would be reassuring. Hi, Lou. Hi, Kathleen. There we go. Okay, we're getting rolling. Hi, everybody. Okay. We don't want to delay too long, but I want to give people a chance to move in from the waiting room. So I'm going to start up my screen share, give you all a chance to say hi in the chat. Okay. Hey, everybody. Okay, so we have both a chat and a Q&A. We're going to take questions at the end. So as we're talking, if we say anything and you're like, huh, or you have an additional question to ask, go ahead and pop that in the Q&A session. That way I can be sure that we see it and address it at the end. And then things that you don't necessarily need an answer to or things for everybody, you can pop into the chat. That would be great. And we might have a slide or two where we pause for questions, but I think in general, we're going to keep the questions to the end. So welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Ariane Folks. I am the CEO and founder of Aeolidia. We're a web design agency, and I'll share a slide here in a moment where we'll get into more detail about that. But I'm the CEO and founder. This is our 20th anniversary this year, which I'm super excited about. And I have brought Helen Helskamp with me. She's our e-commerce strategist, and she is also the one who set up our email marketing service where we help people get Klaviyo set up the way it needs to be so they can send out their flows and campaigns and do everything that we're going to be talking about today. So she is our real email expert at Aeolidia. So what we do is we help merchants. Our main thing we do is we design and develop Shopify sites. We do some pretty complex custom sites, and we also have a quick way to get you off the ground and running with one of our favorite themes. And to support that, we do branding, we do brand strategy and brand identity. We actually help people name or rename businesses as well. We do email marketing, which you're about to be hearing a lot about. And we also help people optimize and maintain their websites. So, oops. I tried to look in the chat and it won't let me do my slides now. I'm going to hand it over to Helen, and she's going to tell you what we are going to be learning about today, and then dive right in.
Hello, everyone. I'm Helen, as Ariane said, and I am the e-commerce strategist. So what I'll be talking about today are some email marketing strategies that you should be starting now to be paving the way for this peak holiday season we're about to enter, as well as best practices that are going to set you up for year-round success in 2025. And then I want to start by talking about why email is so important. Because you're here, you probably understand how important email marketing is for your brand, but I really want to emphasize how vital it is. It's a vital channel for e-commerce. One thing that's unique about email and SMS is it's a channel that for the most part you control, unlike social media or paid advertising. Your returning visitors become customers, and we'll talk a bit about an interesting statistic about that, but email is really your best way to keep in touch with your existing customers, and email is always the top performing traffic channel that we see. So part of my role as the e-commerce strategist at Aeolidia is that I'm always looking at the stats for our projects, looking at Google Analytics and other tools to see what's working well and where there are opportunities for further growth. And what I have seen consistently over decades is that email is always the top performing channel. That doesn't mean it's the only channel you should be working on, but it's one of the most effective marketing channels. And we expect to see 20 to 40% of revenue coming from email and SMS. So this is a data point from Klaviyo that 45% of Black Friday, Cyber Monday sales come from existing customers. And that's one of the reasons why email is so important, because this is really your way of getting in touch with people who are already interested in your brand. Okay, so one thing I want people to really be focusing on now as we head into this peak season is really enthusiastically focusing on growing your list, because this is such an important channel for you heading into the holidays. And that's both your email and your SMS list. Here are some ideas for different ways you can grow your list. One is a must-have is a pop-up. I know pop-ups are annoying, but they're just so effective. And we recommend having a two-step pop-up so that the second screen is collecting SMS opt-ins. Even if you haven't started your SMS program yet, start collecting those opt-ins. And then a teaser is the little tab in the corner of your website. So if somebody's busy shopping and they dismiss the pop-up, but then they remember there was some great offer and can't figure out how to get it back, that's a way for them to pull back that pop-up and sign up. I know that I can open an incognito window and probably get that pop-up back, but a lot of your shoppers aren't going to be that technically savvy. And then you want to target your existing email subscribers with an SMS only pop-up for people who haven't already subscribed to SMS. Every page in your site should have an embedded sign-up form that's usually in the footer of your website. And then you can have special subscribe links that you share on social media. You can have ad campaigns if you're using Shopify, which we strongly recommend for e-commerce. You can have an opt-in for both email and for SMS at checkout. And just to backtrack for people who aren't familiar with SMS, that we're talking about text message marketing. And then one thing you also want to be doing while you're focusing on growing your list is A/B testing those pop-ups. So you can test the different headlines to see what works best, different offers. And if you're using Klaviyo, which is the email platform we like to use with Shopify, there's even an option to have AI help you with figuring out the right timing for pop-ups, whether it's a 5-second delay or when somebody scrolled down 60% of the page or has viewed a couple pages. You generally don't want the pop-up to come right immediately when someone lands on your site because they haven't figured out if they're that interested yet. And then also, you want to have these pop-ups and forms year-round, but for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, make sure those match up with whatever promotions you have going on at the time. Not just Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but if you've got a big Halloween sale coming up. For this season, update your pop-ups so that it matches up with whatever offers you have going on elsewhere.
And did
And
you
then
have some benchmarks to
I
keep in mind?
do, yes. So Klaviyo has reported that the top performing brands during Q4, they expect to see their SMS list grow by 20% over the course of Q4. And then when you're testing your pop-up rates, what you're aiming for is at least a form submit rate of 4%. Over 5% would be an excellent form submit rate.
Okay, that's good to know. And the reason we're focusing so much on this during the holiday season is you're going to be getting more traffic to your site than you normally get, and you want to make sure all these forms are working well. So even if those people don't buy, and especially if they do buy, you can keep in touch with them.
Yes. Yeah. It's common during the holidays that, you might have a whole group of customers that just come back during the holidays and purchase from you and forget about you the whole rest of the year. So getting them on your list is a way for you to keep that relationship going throughout the year. So with all the strategies we're talking about and today, it's really about sending targeted messages. And by that, I mean sending authentic messages that are relevant to the right person at the right time. And we're going to be talking about 3 main strategies for doing that. So the first strategy we'll be talking about is campaigns and segments, which really go together. And that's about making sure that your campaigns are going to the right people and that you're also not sending the wrong messaging to the wrong people. We'll talk about automated flows, which are year-round, but there are some special ones you want to make sure to have set up in time for the holiday season. And then we'll talk about SMS, which is a relatively new channel, but definitely one that you should have in your toolkit. So the first strategy we're going to talk about is campaigns and segments. And a campaign is a message that's sent to a list or a segment, and we'll talk about what the difference is on a specific date and time. So what you want to be thinking about with your campaigns now is you really want to be planning out your campaigns for the whole holiday season. You should be ramping up now, starting in October. That already fall Prime Day or whatever Amazon's calling it has already passed. Halloween's coming up, which is an important holiday for a lot of the creative brands that we work with. You want to think about getting to the point where you're sending 4 to 20 targeted email campaigns per month. That may seem like a lot, and it's really the bigger businesses that are selling 20 campaigns a month. But don't worry, this is not blasting your whole list with all of those campaigns. So we'll talk about that. But for most brands, you want to be sending at least a weekly campaign heading into the holidays. And for SMS, you're going to be sending fewer campaigns. That's 1 to 4 campaigns per month. So no more than 1 a week. And then during this busy holiday season, the SMS networks can get pretty busy. So you want to avoid peak times because that's going to help you actually land on people's phones when you want to. And this is a time when you want to avoid MMS. So SMS is just a plain text message, and MMS is when you include a photo. And MMS goes through a different network, and it can get very delayed during this season. So that's one reason to avoid that. And also interesting thing is that you would think including images would have more engagement, but we've A/B tested this for quite a few brands. And what we often find is that the click-through rate is higher when there's no image. And I think that is just the curiosity factor. I've noticed that with myself when I get something that says like, oh, we got this great new art print in stock and there's no photo. Of course, you need to click on it because you want to see it. So that's just another reason to avoid MMS, but you can use MMS during other times of the year, but this is a time to avoid it. And then for both email and SMS, try sending off the half hour. So, at 8:40 instead of 8:30 or 8 o'clock. That's again, just so that you're not landing in the inbox at the exact same time that so many other brands are. And then with monitoring your open and click rates, what you're aiming for is an open rate over 45% and a click rate over 2.5%. There's a range there. So if you're close to that, you're okay. If your open rates are lower than 33%, then we start worrying about the deliverability problems. So open and click rate are one of the ways that inbox providers like Gmail understand whether you're sending quality content or not. So if a lot of people are engaging with your emails, they think you probably belong in the inbox, not in the promotions tab. So you want to keep those rates high. And especially because this time of year, everyone's sender reputation goes down a bit. And in January, that's a time of really repairing and boosting those open and click rates. So try to keep them high through the holidays, or just at least monitor them and be ready to do some repair in January.
Helen, does SMS have a different benchmark for open and click rates, or is that similar to email?
It's pretty different. I don't off the top of my head. We can include that in a follow-up email, have a good click rate. There's no open rate. It's so high with SMS that we don't even track it. It's basically like 99% open rate or 98%.
Yeah, it doesn't look at their texts.
Yeah, everyone sees their text, but whether they click on them or not is the rate. And that's an interesting thing to be A/B testing now because it is a newer channel.
Okay.
Of course, you want to be sending quality content. That's a really important way to stand out during the season when people are just bombarded with so many sales. And so really make sure that when you're landing people's inbox, it's still something that they want to be looking at. Always be providing value. And that's just always true, of course, year round. And then there are a few settings that you probably want to be auditing before we get into this busy season. It's going to be different on every email platform. So I'm going to talk about a few settings that I know I like to check in Klaviyo. And this is just a few. You really want to go through all your settings. But one setting that they have in Klaviyo is whether the senders are calculated when you set up your campaign or at the time of sending the campaign. So right now you should be thinking about planning out your campaigns, maybe even getting them scheduled in the calendar view in Klaviyo. But if the recipients are calculated when you set up the campaign, that means anyone who subscribes to your list tomorrow is not going to be in that sender list, or if it's a segment, that's not going to get calculated at send time. So at this time of year, we really want that calculated right at send time, even though that might mean that if you schedule something for a certain time, it might take a little bit longer to go out because that segment or list is being calculated. You want to check your UTM parameters. That's is often in a tracking type of setting in your platform. I've seen a lot of people have unusual UTM settings that cause things not to get tracked correctly in Google Analytics. So you really want to be able to go back in January and look at Q4 and see how these channels did. And if your UTM parameters aren't set up correctly, that can be a problem. In Klaviyo, you want to set the medium UTM parameter to the message type. So that would be email or SMS. About this time last year, we were all stressing out about these new sender requirements. You're probably going into your DNS settings and adding records, and that was to meet Google and Gmail and Yahoo's new requirements. So hopefully everybody has that in place now. Your email program is probably not letting you send emails if you don't have that in place, but make sure you have a dedicated sending domain and you've got your DMARC policy in place. And as I said, just go through all your settings and make sure there are no surprises. Make sure you know whether your lists are double opt-in or single opt-in. There's no right answer there, what they should be, but just make sure all your settings are intentional.
Sounds good. And I know all that stuff can be complicated. So if you're digging into your email settings after this webinar and you have questions, I'm going to send a follow-up email with some resources, and you can always feel free to reply to any of my emails to ask a question.
Okay, so what types of offers are you going to be sending out? A lot of people are, the common thing to do during Black Friday, Cyber Monday is just slash prices, have site-wide discounts, and it can be a race to the bottom. So the brands we work with tend to be very concerned about devaluing their brand. And this isn't really a webinar about the offers you might have, but I just wanted to throw out some ideas for offers that you can have on your website that that are rewarding your best customers and are increasing your average order value rather than just slashing prices and doing deep discounts. And when we build websites, we like to incorporate a lot of this functionality because it's just a great way to be increasing revenue while also rewarding your customers. So always rewarding people for spending more, like with free shipping or volume discounts, like buy more, save more. So if you have something that lends itself to subscriptions, that's a great way to keep customers year round and make it also easy for them to not have to remember to come back and replenish items. Or if you have curated boxes, that's also great. Bundles and sets are great. A lot of people don't want to have to make their own decisions about what goes together, and especially during gift giving season, bundles and sets are great. Upsells such as complete the look on the product page, gifts with purchase, offers that happen right after somebody places an order, and exclusive access, I think, is such a great way to reward VIP customers during this time of year. If you don't have exclusive products, just put together some bundles and give your best customers some early access to those bundles. And we can send you a link to this example content planner if you need some help thinking about what kinds of campaigns you could have during this season.
This is the kind of spreadsheet graphic you're seeing on our slide right now. We can send you that template, and it will have this example setting here, and then it'll have a blank sheet for you to make your own plan. So that's going to come out in the follow-up email to this webinar.
And what I love about the spreadsheet is that that last column is segment. So when you're planning out your campaigns, you really want to be thinking about what segments each of these campaigns go to, because you don't want to be sending to your whole list with every campaign. So a segment is a dynamic group of contacts who meet a certain set of conditions. So a list is your main list. You can subscribe people, you can unsubscribe them, but a segment, someone can only be in that segment if they meet the conditions of the segment. So I won't read through all of these, but these are just some examples of ways you can define segments. Some that would be really important right now would be getting a segment of your VIP customers, whether that's based on lifetime spend or big spenders, the number of times somebody's come back. If you have predictive analytics in your account, if you have a certain amount of volume in Klaviyo, there's predictive analytics, which will you can also use to define some VIP customers. And another great one is people who purchased during this time of year last year. And you can take a moment to look over some of those options.
That's
And I'll also send out the recording.
yeah.
So the reason it's very important to use segments is that segments will always have higher open and click rates when a campaign's sent to a segment, because you're sending more targeted content to a specific group of people. For that same reason, it's going to have higher revenue per user, lower unsubscribe rates. It's just going to be generally more relevant, and all of those things are going to improve your sender reputation, because you're going to have those higher engagement rates, and that's going to help you year round to be landing in people's inboxes and not in the promotions tab, or worse, in the spam tab. And then the really important thing to note is that it's also important to use segments to make sure you're not sending things to the wrong people. Like, you might not want to send a big sale announcement to people who have just purchased the item that you're discounting, or you might not want to include wholesale or trade customers in some of your retail promotional emails. There's lots of ways you can also use segments to exclude people.
Can I tell a little story about what happened with our list and how segments
Yes.
saved us? And we sometimes help clients with this as well. So we were super busy with a bunch of internal work, and I was not able to pay as much attention to our email marketing for a while. We kind of had it on autopilot. And then I realized after a couple months that some bot had been sending a ton of traffic to our site and like signing a bunch of fake accounts up for our mailing list. And so I had been sending email to a lot of emails that were bouncing because they weren't real. So our deliverability or our open rate was going down and down and down, which eventually started making Google think that we were spammers. And so we started ending up in real people's spam boxes. It was horrible. And one of the ways that we came back from this is, instead of emailing the whole list all the time, we would email the people that always open and click and things like that, our most engaged people. And so then that started telling Google, like, hey, we are sending emails that people want to get. We're real, we're not spammers. And so just like over many months, I would like occasionally send to the whole list just to check in with people and give them a chance to engage, but mostly send to our most engaged people just to improve our reputation, which is something Helen's been mentioning a lot when she's talking about maybe you're going to be emailing a lot right now over the holidays, but in January you want to improve your reputation. You might take some time in January just to get back in touch with your favorite people. I'd really like to
Yeah.
hear from you, just to make Gmail and the other email providers like you again.
Yes, we've seen that work very well over and over for so many brands when they do get in trouble with their sender reputation, is that just sending to the most engaged people for a little while starts landing you back in the inbox.
Or sending to very specific emails on specific topics to the people that you know want to get that, because you know you'll be seeing a lot of engagement there too.
Yeah. If you're sending an email about men's clothing to a customer who has never even looked at the collection of men's clothing and only buys women's clothing, then you're pretty much guaranteed they're not going to engage with that email. So you can send out more campaigns by using segments, and they'll be more effective.
Yeah, I have just a couple of questions in the chat that I'm noticing. So
Okay.
Amy's saying she gets a lot of bots signing up, and I knew the first thing I wanted to do was have the bots stop signing up because that is really not helping me. So what we did is we put a CAPTCHA on all of our email sign up forms, and then we use WordPress. Probably most of you are on Shopify or an e-commerce software, but you might find that there is a plugin or something or some area of the settings where you can try to disable that kind of bot traffic. So definitely speak with your website host or Shopify customer service if you're having a problem like that. And you really want to be proactive and not be sending email to a lot of junk accounts. And then Ashley's asking if you recommend sending from a personalized email. So like Susie at susiecrafts.com versus info at susiecrafts.com. Do you have any thoughts on that?
We'll follow up with some info on that. I don't have an official answer.
I have an
Definitely do.
anecdotal answer.
Oh yeah.
So for me, I use Ariane at aeolidia.com and I always have. And I think that's nice because it is personal and people can reply to me and it's me. But it's also not nice because when you have a problem like the bot problem or whatever, now I personally look like the spammer and my actual personal emails to clients and people sometimes end up in their spam folder. So I think striking a balance between using like info and help don't sound very personal and nice, but maybe you could have a second address like Susie Smith at Susie Crafts is the one that your email comes from, just so you don't like pollute it somehow if things go wrong with your mailing list.
Yeah, it's there are a lot of different considerations, and one thing to consider is kind of future proofing it too, that maybe you want to set one up specifically for email so that in the future, if people don't want to receive review requests or something, they're not blocking your newsletter email, because sometimes you're going to be sending from multiple sources. So you can think about that as well. That would be an interesting future blog post topic, I think.
Yeah, there you go.
So some ideas for how you can use segments is we've talked about rewarding your VIP customers, not promoting a product to people who, making sure you're only promoting something to people who haven't purchased it. Although if you have a giftable item, that is something where you do want to actually target people who have already purchased it, because they may have gotten it for themselves. And then I do that all the time with the holidays, is I buy people things that I've already purchased for myself that I know I like. Targeting what products you're showing people. Local segments are great if you're doing local events during the holidays or year round. There's lots of different ways you can identify local people, like if they've ever used the POS system, by geolocation, all kinds of things. And then year round, you want to have a sending cadence that's based on engagement. So as Ariane was saying, sometimes email your whole list to give everyone a chance to engage, but then in between that, email some of the people who've engaged in the last 90 days, then people who have engaged in the last 60 days, and then 30 days, and then the whole list, and cycle through that. Always go back and look at your stats. And another way you can use segments is you can export your best customer list to an ad platform and use that to help build audiences. So many possibilities, and we love to brainstorm these because the segments that we create for every brand we work with are different and very specific to the brand.
Totally. And I want to say I see that we have 3 questions in the Q&A, but Zoom is not letting me click them while I also share my screen. But thank you for posting in the Q&A. I will definitely be able to find those when we get through the slides and are ready to take questions. So go ahead and keep adding questions to the Q&A and we will get to them all at the end.
Okay, I know I'm really driving this point home that you don't want to blast your whole list, but here are some possible segments that you might want to set up before Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And I would say definitely those VIPs and the people who are previous holiday shoppers are ones you want to be specifically targeting with some early messaging to catch them before they go to other brands. And then the next strategy we're going to talk about is automated flows. Besides segmentation, this is the other crucial email marketing strategy for sending targeted messages to people. An automated flow is an email sequence that's triggered by a user's behavior. So a campaign, you're deciding what day and time you're sending this and who you're sending it to. Flow messages get sent out to each individual person at the time that's relevant to them based on their behaviors. So this is kind of a generic customer journey, but you can think of your own brand's customer journey and all the times that a customer interacts with your brand. Maybe you have a brick and mortar shop and they sometimes purchase there. Maybe they find you in your brick and mortar shop and then they go to your website and then they look at some products, but they go away. And then later they add them to their cart and then they forget about them. All these different things, or they wanted something that wasn't in stock. And eventually you want to think about having automated flow set up for every touch point that you can think of that you have on your own journey with your customer. So there are some flows that are really essential for e-commerce, and any time of year, it's really important to get these in place. And then there are some that are really good to have in place for the peak season. The first absolute essential flow is the welcome series. So this is triggered by somebody subscribing to your list. You probably have some kind of offer, whether that's a free download or a discount on your site. That first email in this flow is really going to be focused on delivering that reward. And then it's good to drip out a series of emails. The timing is different for different brands. At this time of year, we want to tighten that up. So maybe instead of once a week, you're doing it every few days. And this is introducing someone to your brand. So obviously they were interested enough to sign up, but that doesn't mean they read your about page or read the whole thing, or that they really went through your navigation and saw everything you have to offer. They may not know special things about your products, how you make them, what inspired your brand, what the brand values are. Lots of things. This is a flow we spend a lot of time on when we're working on a Klaviyo project, from copywriting to design. And this is such a great way to keep in touch with people when they're at their peak of interest with your brand, where they like you so much they give you their email address and invited you into their inbox. And then some really important flows to get in place before you have all these people coming and shopping your site during such a distracting time of year is these abandonment flows. There's two really important ones, which is a browse abandonment, and that's when somebody has been looking at your products, but not getting as far as adding them to cart. And then there's cart or checkout abandonment, and that's when somebody gets a little bit farther in the process. These, at this point, I think of these as just a courtesy to your customers. I know when I'm shopping, I almost never complete a shopping session. Well, in one session, something interrupts me, and often I think, well, I can close this tab. I'll get an email reminder, and if I don't, then it's even frustrating. So I love this one. This is somebody we worked with where they sell I don't know how to describe a cat ball. It's like
It's like a hexagon cat bed.
yes, it's amazing. And so in their browse abandoned email, they have two, or their abandoned cart email flow, they have a conditional split here. So if the cart that somebody's abandoned contains one of these cat balls, the email comes from your cat. Or it says like, we're getting all these messages from your cat. They really want this. And so I think it's great with these pushier emails when you're really nudging a customer to make a purchase. Humor is always great in these flows. And you can imagine why it's so important to have these during the holiday season. So if you don't have these set up yet, these are must-haves.
I know some people feel very pushy about email and text messages. They feel like a used car salesman or whatever, but you don't have to send a generic message. You can send a message that really fits with your brand and your values or your voice or has humor, like Helen mentioned. There's lots of ways to make it feel like you. And just when I'm writing this kind of thing, I always try to remember, like Helen said, you're doing your customer a favor. They were like interested, they were on the path. You're not bothering them. You're maybe helping them out if they got distracted. So I always try and like think with a positive spin and like I'm a friendly helper when I'm writing this kind of email, and that makes it easier to feel good about sending it.
And then another nice one to set up is a customer thank you. This is a wonderful way to stand out during this busy season. This is an email that is sent from you, the founder, the day after somebody places a purchase. And we like to do different versions, whether somebody is placing their first order, which is, thanks for trusting us. And when they are a repeat customer, to acknowledge that you recognize they've come back, they liked what they had before, they came back. And then that third purchase really feels like a tipping point when somebody's become a real fan of your brand. And we see so many people writing back to these emails. I saw in our attendee list that Angie of Bobo Design Studio might be here. So I have a little story about her, that we worked together and set up this flow for her brand. And a year later or so, I purchased something on her site, and Angie wrote to me the next day. I was writing back, so great to hear from you. And I thought, of course, she noticed my order because she knows me. And then as I was writing the email, I realized this was an automated reply, and I actually set up the automated reply, but it felt authentic enough, and it was so much in her brand voice. And I sent the email anyway, but acknowledged that I did realize it was an automated email.
These emails can feel so personal. You forget you set them up yourself and the robot's now sending them out.
We hear, and you are writing this email, and you're just getting some assistance making sure it gets to your customers at the right time.
It's true though, especially with a smaller business or a business where you're the designer and people know you as the head of the brand, they will often feel like you are emailing them, and that gives everybody a nice warm fuzzy feeling.
Yeah. And then post-purchase flows are great to set up because you're going to be getting this huge influx of orders. And so you can follow up with educational information like care instructions, how to style, other items that people might want that are related to that, replenishment reminders if it's a consumable item, and also encouraging gifting. As I said, if somebody bought something once, it might become their go-to gift for everybody.
Yeah. And in case it's not obvious, all these slides you're seeing with examples here are campaigns and flows that we have set up for the shop owners that we work with.
So this slide's a bit overwhelming and I want to read everything, but these are just some examples of ways that you can trigger a flow, different types of user behavior that can kick off a series of emails. Some other great ones to get in place before this peak season are a flow to win back lapsed customers, back in stock notifications if you expect that things are going to be coming in and out of stock during this season and year round. The VIP rewards. So when somebody hits that threshold of having spent enough to fall into that VIP segment, that you send out a special thank you for them. And Klaviyo can do something called a price drop email. So if somebody's looked at a certain product, when the price drops, when you set that product on sale, it will automatically notify people. Or maybe you're just going to handle that with your campaigns this season.
And the nice thing about all these automated flows is you can be sleeping or on vacation and you're still like personally reaching out to people at just the right time and selling your products without having to sit there manually doing it.
And then you do want to do a bit of housekeeping on your existing flows. Like hopefully most of you have a welcome flow already set up, but as I mentioned, you might want to shorten those time delays. That's true of the abandoned cart emails. Somewhere in between 1 to 4 hours is a great delay for that first email. So if it's at 4 hours now during the holidays, you might want to shorten that to 1 or 2 hours for that first reminder, since people are going to be bombarded with so much marketing from so many different brands. Make sure your content's always consistent with what you have going on. So you can change your content now to mention some seasonal Black Friday, Cyber Monday, holiday content, but just remember to go back and change that after the holidays are over. And again, update your sign up forms to be consistent with the other offers you have. So the last strategy I'm going to talk about is SMS. That is something we consider to be an integral part of your email marketing channel, even though it's technically not email. We do recommend using the same platform for both email and SMS. We have a whole blog post about all the reasons why this can be helpful, but the main reason that is that it allows you to have a cohesive strategy across both messaging channels so that you're not, people aren't getting 2 duplicate messages at the same time from email and SMS unless you intend for that to be happening. And that with these flows, you can weave them together. So in your abandoned cart flow, maybe you want to start by sending an email. And then if you find a few hours later that somebody did not even open that email, you can send an SMS message. SMS is more expensive, so that's why it might make sense to check email first. And that way you're not sending both and bothering people on too many different channels. People who sign up for SMS are very enthusiastic about your brand. And so that's another great segment to give early access to exclusive products or just early access to sales. Anything time sensitive, if you have if you're going to have a product drop where you expect things to run out quickly, make sure to send that to your SMS subscribers. That's why they sign up for SMS. They want to be, they want time sensitive news, and they don't want to go to their inbox and find out that they've missed an opportunity. And then you will get a sense from collecting data of people who just prefer SMS over email, even if they're subscribed to both. And you can start using that to determine which channel you use to contact people. And just keep in mind, SMS should be used much less frequently than email. So when we're talking about maybe sending 20 messages a month for email during this peak season, no more than 4 for SMS. And while this channel is still new and maybe not all your competitors are using SMS, this is a great way to differentiate yourself when people's inboxes are so full.
Love it.
So this is, we talked about growing your list in general. These are some very SMS specific ways. So we talked about that 2-step pop-up where you're collecting email on the first screen and then phone number on the second screen. You don't want to do those both on the first screen. That can just really reduce your form submit rates because it's just too many questions. Phone number is a bit more personal. So secure that email address before you ask for the phone number. Target your existing subscribers. Start mentioning to your email subscribers in your email newsletters that you've got some SMS, some special perks for your SMS subscribers. And with Klaviyo, there's special links that you can use on social media that make it really easy for people to subscribe on mobile without having to type in their phone number. And then again, that checkbox at checkout.
And then what's this thing about BFCM versions of your forms?
Yeah, that's sort of what I've been talking about, that if you're planning to have a promotion for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, make sure you update all your forms to match that. So if you have like 10% off as your email sign up, but you're about to have a 20% off sale, make sure that that's clear. Like if you sign up now, you're going to get early access to, or you're going to be the first to know about our biggest sales of the year, our best offers of the year, if you don't want to focus so much on discounts.
Yeah. And then after the excitement is over, remember to turn that all back to your normal
Yes,
messaging.
yeah. Definitely set reminders for yourself.
So we
So,
have quite a few questions. So I think this is our last thing. So we'll go through this one
yes,
quickly and then we'll get to all your questions.
yes. So I just wanted to cap this off by saying that everything we're talking about is really about having authentic, personalized conversations with your customers. And these are things that are going to serve you well and serve your customers well by making sure they're getting relevant content to them year round. And this peak season coming up is just a good push for you to get a lot of these things in place.
Wonderful. We're all just people chatting with our customers. We like the photo for that last slide is in one of our clients' retail shops, and it's just a reminder that you aren't spamming people. You're just chatting with them the same way you would in a retail shop. Okay, so here is our Q&A. Kathleen asks if we work with Adobe Express.
In what
In what context?
in what context? That might be more of a question for our designers.
Yeah, Kathleen, go ahead and email me after. I'd be happy to help out with that. I'm not sure exactly how that
I don't
works.
personally.
Yeah. Teresa asked, what is the click rate goal for emails during the holidays again? Is that a different click rate than the 2.5% that you showed on the screen? Do we have a different benchmark during the holidays?
It ranges so much. I would say like aim for over 1%. The open rate's really more important when you're talking about deliverability, but it's going to depend so much on your offer. So with the open rate, when you're trying to improve that, you're working on your subject lines and the preview text, because that's all people see before they open. With the click rate, I like to think of just improving, like learning from your campaigns and then improving from there. So if you feel like you had a great call to action, but nobody's clicking, try playing around with that call to action, moving it higher in the email, making sure the button is really prominent. If it was only a text link, make it a button. All kinds of things to do to play around with that. And if it's lower than 1%, start worrying about it. 2.5% is a great open rate.
Okay, awesome. Leanna has a great question, which I totally relate to. I send out some emails that are just stories, just like little notes about my process about a collection that's not available yet. So there wouldn't be the goal of a click. The goal is just that they open it and read it. Is this not a good idea? Emails with low clicks are not good to send out.
I would always give people a reason to click. So if it's about something that isn't available yet, it can be like click here to be the first to notified when this drops. They're already on your list because they're getting your newsletter. But what you can do is have it create a segment of all the people who did click that. And maybe you're not going to email just that segment when the collection launches. You might email everyone, but you can create a segment and see how many people are clicking on that. You could even have a series of links like going to be launching one of these 3 collections next. Which one are you most excited to see? And just get some information that way. So give people a reason to click. And it can be just to say, like, I'm definitely interested in this item you're talking about that isn't available yet. You can even create a product for it, have the inventory be 0 and start collecting, notify me when back in stock. And then that happens automatically.
Yeah. And then Helen, I'm wondering, like, is it harmful to send out a newsletter that gets like a lot of opens and reads, but no clicks? Like, does that signal to email providers that you're no good, or is that fine?
Not here and there. I mean, yeah, you don't want to be sending all your emails where there's not a lot of clicks, but even a low open rate for a single email is not going to hurt your deliverability.
Yeah.
It's a pattern over time.
And then I think like I relate to what Leanna's saying with my newsletter, we send weekly, and I don't want to always be trying to sell you something. Sometimes I just want to be like, here's the thought I had, just because I want people to feel like they're getting some value in relating. So there's definitely ways to do that while also being a good business person.
But
And I'm
you
gonna,
send out a great list of clickables in your newsletters, and I think that's great. And also if your email is too long, it's going to get clipped by Gmail. And so you can also just have part of your content, like the start of what you're thinking about, and then link to a blog post with everything. But yeah, anytime you have an opportunity to get people to your site, that's a good thing to do.
yep, yeah, I see Amy suggesting that in the chat is you can write a blog post and have people click through to that, like Helen was just also saying. Um, And then I'm going to circle back to Kathleen, who has followed up about Adobe Express. She says she uses Adobe for making artwork, and Express can take that artwork and create email and social media
Oh,
variations. So that would be like, I know Helen is going to say we recommend Klaviyo for email, but maybe you can just say a brief thing about choosing an email platform.
yes. Yeah, we work with a lot of creative brands, and email design can be tough because it's not like web design. It's every email reader is going to render things differently. So a way to have design control is often to design something in a graphics program and then export that as an email. It's not great for accessibility or for mobile, for people on mobile, because as images resize, sometimes text and images can be hard to read. So we like to have a mix of, like, maybe there's some creative graphics with some fun text, but then the rest of the copy is live copy. Yeah, so that's can be a pitfall with using graphics programs for email. I would say just use it for some of the graphics in your email and use live text for a lot of the email.
Lovely. And I see Liesel, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is asking, does sending in segments garner better click rates and is less likely to get flagged as junk or promotional just by the nature of sending emails in smaller batches? Not exactly.
Yeah, no, not that they're smaller, but because they're more targeted. So your subject line might be, the example I gave was like men's and women's clothing, like our new spring women's collection. If you send that to people who only buy men's clothes, they're not going to open that email. They're just going to see the subject line and delete it. So it's really more about that you're sending content to the right people. If you're sending to customers who just purchased yesterday, they're probably not going to open your email. If you're sending a browse abandonment email to someone who just looked at a product, they're highly likely to open because it's like, oh, I was just looking at this item.
Yeah, so it's not that the segment is small, it's that the segment is people who are very likely to open what you're sending.
I always like to use the
They
metaphor of
always, oh, go ahead, Helen.
Sorry. I always like to use the metaphor of a brick and mortar store, even if you don't have a brick and mortar store. But if you saw someone going around your shop looking at like the cute baby items and gifts for babies, you wouldn't keep saying like, come over here, look at these novelty adult t-shirts I have. You would say like, oh, let me, I see you're interested in this. Let me show you some of our best sellers in this area. And just using whatever information you have about someone to make sure that you're having a relevant conversation.
Yep. And the bare minimum, if you haven't been segmenting people by what they're interested in yet and you don't have that data, you can do what I did which is just to email the people who have been opening and clicking recently. And almost every email program will help you make a segment of people that have like maybe opened or clicked an email in the last 30 days. And if you send to that list, you're going to only those people, you're going to get a much higher open rate than if you send to people who've maybe been subscribed for 5 years and maybe their email address doesn't work anymore, they've lost interest or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Every email program seems to have that type of segment logic built in because it is such an important tool for maintaining your sender reputation. You're basically artificially inflating your open rates by sending to a segment of people that you know is very likely to open and click.
It's also a nice thing to do if you, let's say, for example, you want to start sending more often and you sort of feel like you're bothering people. You could send every other email to the whole list and then every off one to the people who are really into it. So you know you're not bothering them. Or maybe you have something that feels a little off topic you want to email about, something maybe a little more personal or about your like artist journey or something like that, and you're like, oh, these people are used to something else. You could always test that content on your most interested people and feel a little less weird about sending it. There's lots of things you can do. Okay, we have a few more questions. Somebody says, I've seen newsletters with an opt-out, for example, opting out of Mother's Day messages. Is that just a setting when you set up your flow?
It's so a Mother's Day marketing would usually be campaigns, not flows, because that happens at a certain time of year versus based on user activity. But you would want to use segmentation for that. I think that's a great thing to do, is offer a link or a form for people to sign up and opt out. And then you just exclude that segment when you're sending those marketing emails.
Right. So people might click, no, I don't want to get Mother's Day messages, which will add a tag to them in your email program that says no Mother's Day messages. And then every time you send a Mother's Day message, you will exclude that list of people.
And that can be just a preference that's saved in their profile, and you can, then they won't get them in the future as well. And also frequency is a similar thing. If you want to just ask people how often they want to hear from you, that's another thing you can do and use segments for that.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Like maybe you have a monthly email that you want to go out to everybody, but you could have your VIPs or most interested people get a weekly email in addition to that. That can be something you let people choose.
Yeah.
And then they end up tagged and you make sure that you email the right group each time.
Yeah.
So Ashley is asking, can you upload an email list to Klaviyo? And should you segment the uploaded list out before uploading it?
It will automatically be segmented, but you can also add an extra column that's just a custom profile property if it was a certain event or something like that, and you just want to tag those people as being part of this particular upload. Otherwise, you can create a segment of people that I manually uploaded on this date.
Yeah. So behind the scenes, everybody here now listening to this webinar has got a tag on them that says Klaviyo email webinar in my email program, which is how I'm going to email you in the next few days with the recording and the follow-up information. But without that tag, I would have to send it to the whole list, and that would not make a lot of sense to everybody. Okay, so Amy is asking a question about wait lists. If you have people sign up for a wait list, can you automatically add them to your main list after they purchase, or how might that work?
We like to have an extra checkbox to say, I want to be notified when this item is available and sign me up for your newsletter. So you have explicit consent. Otherwise, make it very clear by signing up for this, by entering your email in this form, you're signing up for our newsletter.
Yeah. Okay, I hope that made sense. Now, I have a couple questions about bots, which I've been holding because we already talked about bots a bit, and that's not our focus. We do have 6 minutes, though. So if anyone is sitting there right now with a burning question, this is the perfect time to throw it in the Q&A. And other than that, I'm going to talk about bots for another moment. So Liesl asked, what's the best way to remove bots from your master profile list in Klaviyo?
Oh, it's such a pain. It depends. I would want to look at your list and see what kinds of things. There's so many different ways people get bots. A big problem right now is Shopify account spam, where bots are for some reason signing up for Shopify accounts, and then those get synced over to your Klaviyo list. And sometimes those have certain attributes, but basically the strategy is figure out some segments that are catching the bot signups, but are not catching real people. And that can also include signed up in this certain time frame, has never opened or clicked an email. It can be whether they've soft bounced, and just pile together a bunch of different conditions that seem to be capturing them. And then in Klaviyo, you can suppress a segment just with one click. It's in the little menu next to the segment that you can suppress an entire segment all at once. So that is really easy once you figure out a segment that captures all those people. And do always have a segment of people who have been on your list for a certain amount of time, maybe it's 6 months, and have never opened and clicked, and start excluding those people. The reason you might want to actually remove them is because Klaviyo is charging you for your profiles if you signed up for Klaviyo after a certain date. So that may be why you want to actually suppress them, so you're not paying for them. But if people are on your list and just never opening or clicking, stop sending to them. You can also set up a flow called a sunset flow, which will automatically try to re-engage people. And then if they get through that whole flow and they don't engage, then definitely suppress them.
Yeah, and the sunset flow would be emails like, hey, we noticed you haven't been opening our emails. Maybe you don't want to be on the list, but if this is a mistake and you do want to be on the list, click this link. And then by them clicking it, that shows engagement again, and they don't end up dropping off of your list.
Yeah, even if they just read your email, they're engaging, and then they'll fall off the list. So off this unengaged segment, and they won't get removed. Yeah.
It gives them a chance. I feel like there's some email programs or some reasons where there will be people who are actively reading your emails, but they don't show up that way in your email software. So it's nice to let them know, hey, you're being unsubscribed unless you take an action, just because sometimes weird things can happen. Okay, Christy in the chat has the kind of plaintive question. Why do bots do that? I don't know, Christy. The internet's horrible. That's my answer. Do we know why bots do that? Like, what's the point of
Yeah, I mean, the account spam, I don't know what the goal is. And yeah, and then email sign up form spam. It's a pain. And if things get really extreme, there are various services where you can upload your whole list and have your list cleaned. And it will tell you which ones are the suspicious emails, and you can remove those. It can be quite expensive because you pay by email for that.
We did that to recover our list though, because it was like, what? It was such a mess in there. Wallace, hi Wallace, asks, what is the timeline to set up SMS for a brand?
Like, how long does it take us to set it up?
I don't know. Like, I don't know what you mean by timeline, Wallace. Oh, she says yes.
Yes. 3 to 4 weeks is how long it takes us to set everything up, to actually get SMS set up and functional. There is a little bit of a waiting period when you apply for a phone number, and then it takes sometimes 2 weeks to get approved. It might take longer now. So if you're using Klaviyo, just get SMS turned on at least, so that your phone number gets provisioned and the process gets started.
Yeah. And then everything we're talking about here, especially on Klaviyo is not the world's most user-friendly software. So if you start digging in and you're just like, what in the world? This is what we do all the time, and we would love to help you out with it. And then you'll know everything is set up correctly and weird things are not happening behind the scenes. So email me back if you're curious about how we can help you out with your Klaviyo. And then it looks like we have time for one more, and we have one more, which is wonderful. And Pamela asks, how do I turn emails that are on my list but who didn't explicitly subscribe to subscribed users that I can email, which is what I just did last week with a whole bunch of people. Helen, do you have an official expert answer, or do we want my anecdotal answer?
Yeah, let's hear your answer.
My anecdotal answer is I had a bunch of people on my list for some reason or another who I needed to email like once, or like some automation from Zapier moved them over there, but they were not officially on my list. And then we also we want to be able to be in touch with our past clients to let them know if there's a big Shopify change. So we also moved them all over to our mailing list, but a bunch of them aren't subscribed to my newsletter. So what I did is I sent a one-time email and I was like, hey, we noticed you're not on our mailing list. Here's the link to subscribe if you'd like. And of course, there's more detail about why you'd want to do that. It is kind of like a marketing thing you're doing here. So like a compelling message to give them a chance. And then I made sure to say, because I don't want to spam anybody, I was like, if you do nothing, you won't be added to your list and I'm going to delete you from our software next week. But if you want to join, click here. There's also an unsubscribe link at the bottom if you really never want to hear from me again. So just giving people one chance to be like, oh, I didn't even realize this was an option for me, but I'd love to subscribe. But just like, you gotta have your own moral code about who you're going to email and if it's reasonable. Like one of my tags of people was we had attended a trade show and we taught 3 classes and we had all the email addresses to write people back after the class with follow-up info. And so we did that once, but then I realized they were still on our list 3 months later. So I actually just emailed them all last week to be like, hey, we're going to be at the conference again next year. Is there anything you would like to hear us speak about? And then also I noticed you're not on my newsletter. Click here if you'd like to join. So it's nice to give people a chance, but don't just start emailing them if you don't have their permission.
Yeah. And I'd say my official answer is it's a kind of a legal issue and there are canned spam laws. We can't advise about what technically is okay or not, but there are, abandoned cart emails and browse abandoned emails go out to people who you have their profile, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're subscribed to your newsletter. If they've unsubscribed, they're not going to get those reminders. But if they're just a profile that's come over from Shopify, but they're not necessarily subscribed, the reason you can email them is because they've expressed interest in purchasing a product. So that's how that logic works. And so there are people, you want to keep those profiles around in your Klaviyo account because there are situations like a post-purchase flow can go out to those people because it's referencing a specific past order, like the emailing people who attended a paid workshop of ours. Those are past customers and we're sending a follow-up. But yeah, you don't want to put people just onto your list without consent.
And one thing to be careful of is if you did collect a bunch of email addresses, and even if you had consent, but it's been like 6 months to a year ago, people are not going to remember that necessarily. So if you suddenly send an email out to thousands of people who weren't expecting it, they might report you as spam, which can really flag you as a bad sender, or they might unsubscribe in droves, which is not worth the aggro. So just be careful with the list you're sending to. So
we didn't talk about unsubscribe rate, but that's a very, very important signal for the email providers is you want to keep your unsubscribe rates low. And in our follow-up email, we can include an exact number from that, but it's much less than 1%, much, much less.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up, but if you just were not here at the beginning, I'm going to let you know that we did record this. We will be sending the recording. We work at Aeolidia, a web design studio. We work on Shopify sites. We do branding. We do email marketing, and we'd be happy to help with all this. So when you get my follow-up email, if you have any questions or want any kind of help on anything, hit reply and I will help you out. So thanks so much, and best wishes for a lucrative holiday season and send out those emails and SMS messages. It was great to chat today.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thanks for the great questions.
Yep, thanks. I will follow up with more info. Bye.
Bye.